The battle had ended, but the echoes of war still lingered in the void of space. Captain Elias Ward floated in the command chamber of the human flagship Aurora, staring at the remnants of the alien fleet sprawled across the dark canvas beyond the viewports. Debris drifted silently, illuminated by the cold light of distant stars. The human crew worked tirelessly, tending to wounded and repairing the battered ship, but the air was heavy with unease. They had won this skirmish, yet the cost had been high and the war showed no signs of ending. Elias rubbed his temples and sighed. The constant strain of battle, of endless strategy and sacrifice, weighed on him. Humans had fought fiercely, their ingenuity and courage allowing them to survive against a technologically superior foe. Yet, despite their successes, something about this war felt different. Something was coming that neither he nor anyone else could have anticipated. Then the message arrived. It began as a transmission across every human channel, simultaneously urgent and chilling. The signature was unmistakable. The alien Queen Zyra herself. Her voice, though filtered through translation, carried the authority of an empire and the precision of a mind far beyond human comprehension. "Humanity," she said, her words echoing in the command chamber. "Hear me. The war may continue or it may end. The choice is yours. One human must marry me immediately. Refuse, and the war continues without mercy." There was power behind her words, a weight that reminded them that humanity, despite its resilience, had only survived so far because of careful tactics and quick thinking. Admiral Stone, a stern woman who had led humans through countless campaigns, stepped forward, her face set with a mixture of resolve and disbelief. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice low but firm, "you are to be the human representative. The Queen demands your presence. This is not a suggestion. We have no idea what her fleets are capable of if we refuse. You will go and you will represent humanity. That is your duty." The ship would carry him to the Queen's world, a place humans had only seen in glimpses from afar, an empire vast and precise, with technologies that made even their most advanced weapons look primitive. Despite his fears, part of him wondered what it would be like to meet the mind behind the voice, the figure who had commanded armies and inspired both loyalty and terror across the galaxy. When the transport finally docked with the Queen's flagship, Elias could hardly believe what he saw. The vessel was unlike any human ship, towering spires of metal and light, smooth and gleaming surfaces that reflected the stars like water. Energy pulsed along conduits that seemed almost alive, and intricate patterns shimmered across the hull, a combination of art and engineering that humans had never imagined. Elias stepped aboard, feeling a strange mix of awe and trepidation. The corridors were wide and luminous, the walls lined with alien symbols that pulsed faintly as if responding to his presence. He was escorted through the ship by alien aides, tall, slender beings with translucent skin and eyes that seemed to see into the very core of him. They moved with grace, their gestures precise, almost ceremonial. Finally, he entered the throne room. The space was immense, vast enough to hold hundreds, yet it was sparsely furnished, dominated by the presence of Zyra herself. The Queen was taller than any human, her form elegant yet commanding. Her eyes were an intense shade of violet, glowing faintly in the ambient light. Her presence filled the room with an energy that made Elias instinctively straighten his posture, despite every instinct telling him to rebel. "Captain Ward," Zyra said, her voice smooth, yet carrying the weight of countless victories. "You have come at last. Do you understand why you are here? But the war continues because we do not yet trust each other fully. Marriage, for us, is a bond that cannot be ignored. Through it, we shall see whether your species can rise to the challenge of partnership." She did not simply seek a puppet or a submissive spouse. She sought someone who could match her mind, someone capable of holding their own. And somehow she had chosen him. Over the next hours, he was introduced to the Queen's advisors and aides, each more impressive and intimidating than the last. Some spoke in languages that humans could barely decipher, yet their intentions were clear. They scrutinized him, testing his reactions, his ability to think, and his resolve. Each test, though indirect, reminded Elias that he was not merely a guest. He was a representative of humanity's entire race. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on him, heavier than any armor or weapon he had ever carried. Despite the gravity of the situation, Elias found moments of fascination. The alien world aboard the ship was a marvel. Gardens floated in zero-gravity chambers, with plants that glowed and shifted color with the slightest touch. Streams of light flowed like water, carrying energy to every part of the vessel. Every detail, from the floor to the ceiling, spoke of a civilization that had achieved mastery over matter, energy, and art in ways humans had only dreamed of. Yet for all its beauty and power, Elias could sense a rigidity in their society. Order and discipline were paramount, but freedom was limited. Every gesture, every action seemed regulated, and individuality appeared constrained. Humans had their flaws, but their creativity, unpredictability, and stubbornness were traits Zyra could never replicate. Perhaps that was why she sought him, not to bend him, but to understand him. Hours turned into days as Elias adjusted to life aboard the Queen's ship. He met other alien officers, navigated complex etiquette, and endured subtle psychological tests designed to gauge his intellect and temperament. Zyra observed silently, her eyes following him, assessing not just what he did, but how he reacted. In moments when she spoke, her words were sharp yet curious, probing the depths of his mind with questions that often had no clear answer. One evening, as Elias wandered along a terrace that overlooked the stars, he felt a strange mixture of anxiety and determination. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they had survived. They had faced invaders, famine, disease, and betrayal, yet humans had always adapted, fought, and endured. Perhaps this challenge, though unlike any before, was no different. Survival had always required courage and creativity, and he would need both in abundance. A soft hum behind him signaled Zyra's presence. "You contemplate, Captain Ward," she said, her voice carrying across the terrace without need for raised volume. Elias straightened. "Yes, Your Majesty, it's a lot to take in. You see not only the strength of my empire, but the cost of war. That awareness may serve you well, and it may serve humanity even better. Humanity will be judged not by survival alone, but by its ability to adapt, to think, and to stand firm. I am not your enemy, Captain Ward, yet. That is why I am giving you this chance." This required more than courage or skill. It required understanding, patience, and the kind of creativity that defined humanity. And for the first time in many years, Elias felt a spark of something he had almost forgotten amid the endless war: hope. Humans had survived not by being the strongest, but by being clever, resilient, and unpredictable. Perhaps against this alien empire, that was exactly what they needed to survive, and to prove that humanity's spirit could shine, even in the darkest reaches of space. He straightened his shoulders, letting the weight of duty settle into determination. Tomorrow, he would meet Zyra again, and the real challenge would begin. Humanity's future, and perhaps the future of peace across the stars, rested on his ability to stand firm, and to prove that humans were more than pawns in an alien game. The stars shone on, distant yet unwavering, as Captain Elias Ward prepared to face the unknown. And in that vast, silent universe, one truth remained clear. Humanity would not yield, and it would not be underestimated. Captain Elias Ward woke to the soft hum of the Queen's ship. The corridors glowed with a gentle light, revealing walls that seemed to shift color as he walked. Each step reminded him that he was far from home, in a world that followed rules no human had ever known. The night had not brought sleep, only questions. What kind of being demanded marriage as a condition to end a war? Could he really navigate this alien empire without losing everything human? An aide arrived silently, gliding forward without a sound. The being's translucent skin shimmered in the light, its eyes reflecting an intelligence that unsettled and fascinated him. "Captain Ward," it said in perfect, calm English, "Her Majesty awaits. The day's schedule has been prepared. You will accompany the Queen on a tour of the Empire." He followed the aide through corridors that widened into open spaces filled with strange sights. Floating platforms, streams of light moving like water, and objects that seemed to hover without support. Human technology, advanced as it was, seemed crude here. Yet the Queen had said humans were valued not for strength, but for creativity. That thought gave him a small comfort. If he could think, improvise, and act, maybe he could survive this trial. They entered a chamber that opened to the outside of the ship. Stars stretched infinitely, and in the distance, Elias saw the alien homeworld. Unlike human planets, it was not round and simple. It had structures that spiraled like giant towers of crystal, connected by bridges of shimmering energy. The air was thick with light, not just from the sun, but from the planet itself. It radiated power, beauty, and something strange that reminded him of both awe and fear. Zyra appeared behind him, her violet eyes observing the scene. "You see our home," she said. "Every design, every tower, every light is built for efficiency and harmony. Nothing is wasted, and everything is connected. Adaptation is the true test. And yet, as impressive as it all was, Elias noticed subtle weaknesses. The systems were rigid. A misstep in the sequence of energy conduits could halt an entire district. One clever idea, one small human innovation could create unexpected effects. The Queen noticed his scrutiny. "You are perceptive. Tell me, Captain, what do you see in our society?" "Powerful, organized, but it feels controlled. People have no freedom to act outside the rules. It's efficient, but it doesn't feel alive the way humans live. You may prove your kind worthy of partnership if you can show that chaos can serve as strength." Elias observed them, noting how each seemed connected to a larger system, like parts of a living machine. Humans thrived on individuality, often clashing, yet creating art, music, and ideas that inspired generations. Here, beauty was calculated, precise, and functional. Elias' mind raced. How could he navigate this world, respecting their rules while preserving his own values? He realized that surviving this challenge would require more than courage. It would require understanding Zyra's logic, learning the limits of the Empire, and finding moments where human ingenuity could shine. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the corridors. A warning display lit up, showing a small fleet of alien ships approaching. Not the Queen-S, but another faction, rebels perhaps, testing the Queen's authority or attempting sabotage. The Queen's aides moved instantly, analyzing data, issuing commands. Elias felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. War had taught him to act quickly, even in unknown situations. "What are they?" he asked. "An internal faction seeking to destabilize the Empire," Zyra replied. "They do not yet understand your species. Perhaps it is time for you to demonstrate humanity's value. If we create a diversion here, we can split their forces. Then we can isolate and neutralize the leaders without unnecessary destruction." It was risky but relied on timing and intuition rather than raw power, something humans excelled at. Zyra's violet eyes gleamed. "You act boldly. This is unusual for your kind, but I sense intelligence. Proceed." The rebel ships faltered, caught in the energy fields, and the command vessels were neutralized with minimal destruction. Zyra observed quietly, her expression unreadable, but her eyes reflected approval. Afterward, she led Elias back to the throne room. "You have shown creativity, courage, and quick thinking," she said. "These are traits humans possess in abundance. And yet your species still struggles with limitations. I wish to see more." Days passed in a similar pattern. Elias learned about alien customs, observed court rituals, and endured tests that challenged both mind and character. Zyra allowed him access to many parts of her world, yet always maintained a subtle control. Elias noticed the alien officers' respect for him grew as he navigated challenges with strategy and composure. Some even began to smile faintly at his unorthodox methods, acknowledging that humans could surprise even the most disciplined empire. One evening, as they walked through a chamber filled with floating gardens, Elias spoke openly for the first time. "Your world, it's beautiful, but I can see the cost. Your people achieve perfection, yes, but at the expense of choice. Humans, we value freedom even when it's messy. That is why we endure, that is why we survive." Despite the strangeness, despite the fear, there was respect between them, a recognition of strength even across species. He realized that survival in this empire would not be about submission or domination. It would be about mutual understanding, about demonstrating that humanity's qualities were not weaknesses but assets. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. Alerts blared again. A new threat approached, more dangerous and unexpected than before. Elias felt a familiar sense of urgency. Here in the Queen's world, amid alien elegance and power, humans were still under threat. But now he understood that their greatest weapon was not weapons alone, but ingenuity, courage, and unbreakable spirit. As the stars flashed past the windows and the alien fleet maneuvered in unpredictable ways, Elias prepared for what was to come. Humanity's survival, and perhaps its future partnership with this powerful empire, would depend on him. And deep inside, he knew one truth. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to rise. Zyra's presence beside him was steady, commanding, yet not unkind. "Do not falter, Captain Ward," she said. "Your kind has potential, and I will watch closely to see if you can rise to it. Not for humanity, not for myself, and not for you." And in that vast expanse, one human mind stood ready, undaunted, proving that even in a world ruled by alien precision, human spirit could shine, clever and resilient, refusing to be underestimated. Captain Elia's ward had settled into the rhythm of the Queen's world, but comfort was never guaranteed in a place so unfamiliar. Every corridor, every floating garden, every chamber seemed designed to test his mind, patience, and resolve. And now, the war he had thought paused by Zyra's ultimatum was showing its face again, more dangerously than before. The first warning came at dawn. Alarms echoed through the Queen's flagship, sharp and urgent, breaking the calm of the alien dawn. Screens flared with activity. A faction of alien ships, loyal neither to Zyra nor humanity, had launched a surprise assault on a nearby supply station. The station, a critical hub for the Queen's empire, held both resources and strategic information that could tip the balance of war. Elia's pulse quickened. Though he had not come as a warrior but as a diplomat and a representative, war had a way of finding him. Zyra appeared beside him, moving silently, her eyes sharp with command. "They test us," she said, her voice calm but carrying steel. "You must act, Captain. Show me what humans are capable of." The rebel ships moved with precision, but there were patterns, gaps, and flaws. He realized that while the aliens were powerful, their predictability was their weakness, a flaw that human ingenuity could exploit. He stepped to the tactical console. "We can trap the smaller ships in their approach corridor," he said. "The station's energy shields are strong enough to hold them. If we force them through, we can isolate the command vessels and disable them without excessive damage. It's risky, but it works if timing is perfect. We can exploit their rules against them. We won't just fight. We'll create opportunities, force them into mistakes, and then act decisively." Smaller ships were drawn into traps, energy fields snapping around them, while the command vessels struggled to maneuver. One by one, they were neutralized, and the station was secured. When the battle ended, Zyra observed quietly, her violet eyes reflecting approval. "You acted with courage, intelligence, and decisiveness. These are traits I admire. Many would have relied on brute force. You relied on understanding and on strategy. That is why I am intrigued by your species." And yet, for the first time, he sensed that humans had something the aliens could not anticipate: the ability to adapt under pressure, to think creatively, and to inspire loyalty through courage. Days passed, and the Queen continued her lessons, but now they were mixed with subtle tests. She brought him to councils of advisors, alien nobles who scrutinized him, trying to gauge if his success was chance or a reflection of human skill. Elias noticed that some of them began to whisper, exchanging glances, impressed by his quick thinking and decisiveness. The smallest of human gestures, a suggestion here, a question there, earned subtle nods and even smiles. One evening, Zyra led him to a chamber overlooking the central hub of her empire. Towers of light and crystal stretched into the sky, linked by bridges of energy that pulsed with life. Ships moved in synchronized patterns below, each movement precise, rehearsed, and flawless. Elias felt a mix of awe and determination. This world, this empire, was magnificent, but it was also rigid. One unexpected action, one creative solution, could ripple across it in ways no alien had considered. "You see potential," Zyra said, standing beside him. "Do you understand why I observe you so closely? Perhaps you want to see if your empire can benefit from that." "I will try," he said finally. "Not for myself, but for humanity. If my species is to survive and thrive, I will do everything I can to prove its value." They sought to undermine Zyra, believing that humanity's presence weakened her authority. The nobles had begun gathering ships and resources, planning to challenge the Queen's power directly. Zyra turned to Elias. "The choice is yours. You may act, Captain. Show me how humans influence outcomes beyond direct combat. Use strategy, cunning, and foresight." This was no longer a test of courage alone. It was a test of intellect, diplomacy, and ingenuity. The human's advantage had always been unpredictability and adaptability. Now, he had to apply it in ways the aliens could not anticipate. He studied the intelligence reports, mapping the rebel fleet's positions, their likely tactics, and their weaknesses. Then he crafted a plan that was audacious yet precise. He proposed a series of feints, small attacks designed to mislead the rebels, combined with covert sabotage of their energy supplies. It required coordination, timing, and absolute secrecy. Failure would mean disaster, but success could prevent a bloody confrontation. Zyra watched his preparations closely, asking questions but never interfering. Elias briefed alien officers cautiously, earning skeptical looks and thin smiles. Yet as the plan unfolded, the rebels fell into every trap. Ships were misdirected, supplies intercepted, and the leaders captured without a single major battle. The Queen's empire had been tested, and humans had proven their worth not by brute force but by intelligence and creativity. Afterward, Zyra summoned him to her private chamber. "You have exceeded my expectations, Captain Ward," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Many would have relied on power alone. You relied on understanding, judgment, and foresight. Your species is impressive. But I warn you, these lessons are only beginning." And in this alien empire, those qualities were more valuable than any weapon. Days turned into weeks as Ilias navigated court politics, alien customs, and subtle tests. He learned the art of persuasion, of reading intentions without words, and of using human creativity to turn rigid systems to advantage. He gained the attention and respect of alien officers, some of whom began to treat him not as an outsider but as an equal, strange though it was, considering the vast cultural gap. Yet, even as he learned and adapted, the underlying tension of the marriage ultimatum remained. Zyra's expectations were clear. Humans must prove their worth, not just through survival, but through demonstration of intellect, courage, and adaptability. Ilias felt the constant pressure, knowing that his actions reflected not only on himself but on all of humanity. One misstep, one failed calculation, could undo weeks of careful work. One evening, as he studied a star map of the Empire, a realization struck him. Humans had a unique advantage that even Zyra had not accounted for: unpredictability. The alien empire relied on patterns, on precision, on repetition. Humans thrived in chaos, creating opportunities where none seemed to exist. It was this spark, this unquantifiable quality that had allowed humanity to endure countless wars. And now in the Queen's court it could prove decisive. The Queen appeared silently beside him. "You contemplate," she said. "Do you see the path forward? If we can apply that here, we can show not only that humanity is valuable, but that we can influence outcomes far beyond what seems possible." The challenges ahead were unknown, but he understood something fundamental. Humans survived not by matching power with power, but by thinking, creating, and daring. In this alien world, amid elegance, precision, and immense power, humanity's greatest strength was its spirit, and he intended to prove it. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the Queen's window, distant yet brilliant. Ilias knew that the future, for humanity and the alien empire alike, depended on his actions, his choices, and the courage to act where others might hesitate. And as he gazed at the endless expanse, he felt a quiet certainty. Humans would not be underestimated. They would endure. They would shine. And in this moment, Captain Ilias Ward was ready to prove it. The alien court was tense. Every corridor, every chamber, seemed charged with anticipation. Captain Ilias Ward walked alongside the Queen, his mind racing. The rebellion he had predicted was now in motion. Alien nobles, loyal neither to Zyra nor to her vision, had begun assembling fleets and gathering resources to challenge her authority. It was a test not only of power but of trust, and Ilias understood that his role had expanded. He was no longer just a visitor or a test subject. He was a key player in shaping the outcome. The Queen's violet eyes met his. "The rebellion grows," she said. "Some believe your presence weakens me. Others fear what humanity may bring. You must act, Captain. Influence events not with weapons alone, but with strategy, diplomacy, and cunning." He began by gathering intelligence. Through discreet conversations, careful observation, and subtle questioning, he identified the key rebel leaders, their alliances, and the vulnerabilities of their fleets. Unlike human armies, which relied on flexibility and improvisation, the rebels depended on predictable maneuvers, hierarchical commands, and precise calculations. This predictability was their strength, but also their weakness, something humans had exploited countless times in history. Ilias drafted a plan. He proposed a series of feints to misdirect the rebel forces, combined with covert sabotage of supply lines and communication channels. The Queen's advisors were skeptical, murmuring among themselves. Many had never seen a human approach military strategy with such audacity and subtlety. Zyra's eyes met his, calm yet piercing. "Explain your approach." "Once the rebels' attention is divided, we can isolate their leaders and force surrender without massive bloodshed. It requires timing, coordination, and improvisation, things humans excel at. Humans rarely fight exactly how you expect. Our strength is in adaptation. Predictable tactics may dominate for a moment, but clever strategy lasts longer." Every move was calculated, every action timed. The initial feints drew the rebels into carefully chosen traps. Ships were misdirected, supply lines intercepted, and communication networks disrupted. Rebels found themselves in positions they had not anticipated, their strength diminished not by direct confrontation but by clever manipulation of circumstance. Ilias watched the unfolding events with steady focus. The Queen's eyes followed him constantly, observing not just the results but his decision-making process. Every choice reflected humanity's creativity, courage, and adaptability. It was clear that Zyra's interest in humans went beyond curiosity. She was testing whether they could contribute in meaningful ways to her empire, not as servants but as partners. As the plan reached its climax, Ilias implemented the final phase. The rebel leaders, now isolated and cut off from reinforcements, faced a decisive choice: surrender or destruction. Using a combination of precise strikes and carefully crafted psychological pressure, Ilias compelled them to yield without large-scale casualties. The rebellion, which could have devastated the Queen's rule, was neutralized efficiently. Afterward, Ilias was summoned to the Queen's private chamber. Zyra regarded him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You have done more than I expected," she said. "Many would have relied solely on force. You have relied on intelligence, creativity, and human judgment. Your species may indeed be more valuable than I anticipated." "I am beginning to see that. Your methods have preserved life, maintained stability, and proven humanity's worth. But this is only the beginning. Greater challenges will come, and you must be ready." Humans had survived wars, famines, and disasters not because of sheer power, but because of courage, creativity, and the ability to turn adversity into opportunity. Now, in this alien empire, those same qualities were being tested on a scale he had never imagined. Over the following days, Ilias worked closely with Zyra to consolidate her authority and prepare for potential future threats. He met with alien nobles, some resistant, some curious, and gradually began to build trust. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also capable of insight, strategy, and leadership. The nobles who once doubted him began to recognize that the captain's influence could stabilize not just the empire, but the fragile alliance between humans and aliens. In private moments, Zyra spoke with Ilias about the nature of leadership, power, and responsibility. "You lead not by fear, but by example," she said. "Many in my empire underestimate the value of that approach. Humans may be few, but your actions ripple far beyond your immediate influence." Leadership was not about command alone. It was about insight, empathy, and the ability to inspire. Humans had always led in such ways, often unconsciously, yet here it mattered more than ever. He realized that proving humanity's worth was not just about surviving alien scrutiny. It was about showing that their qualities could enhance the empire itself. The days passed with intense activity. Alien fleets were repositioned, resources safeguarded, and strategic plans reviewed. Ilias remained at the center of every decision, a human mind bridging the gap between two worlds. His ingenuity, courage, and adaptability were tested repeatedly, and each time humans proved their value. One evening, after a long day of planning and negotiation, Ilias stood on a balcony overlooking the city spires of the alien world. The towers glowed with soft light, energy flowing along their surfaces like rivers of brilliance. Ships moved in precise patterns below, yet he could see subtle cracks in their systems, small opportunities where human creativity could influence outcomes. Zyra appeared beside him silently, as she often did. "You have done well," she said. "The rebellion has been quelled, and yet I sense you have more to teach me. It allows us to survive, to adapt, and to thrive where others fail. I believe that together, humans and your empire can achieve more than either alone. Perhaps it is time to consider the next step, one that will unite our peoples and stabilize the galaxy." Yet even as he considered this, he knew the challenge would not be easy. Many alien nobles resisted change, and human leaders would need reassurance that they were not surrendering sovereignty. Over the next days, Ilias worked tirelessly, balancing diplomacy, strategy, and persuasion. He spoke with alien officers and human diplomats alike, crafting a plan that would unify the empire without coercion. It was a delicate task, requiring insight into psychology, culture, and political dynamics. Every conversation, every proposal carried weight. Finally, the Queen called a council. Alien nobles, some skeptical, others cautious, gathered to hear the humans' proposal. Elias presented his plan clearly, showing how a strategic alliance, anchored by partnership and mutual respect, could strengthen the empire while preserving humanity's independence. He emphasized creativity, ingenuity, and human adaptability as assets, not threats. The council debated fiercely. Some opposed him outright, citing tradition and fear. Others saw the value in collaboration. Through careful reasoning and unwavering confidence, Elias swayed many. The message was clear. Humans were not mere observers, they were contributors, partners in shaping a galaxy-wide future. After hours of deliberation, the council reached a consensus. The marriage would occur not as a submission or surrender, but as a symbolic union representing alliance, respect, and mutual strength. Humanity's role in the empire would be recognized, and the war would end not through defeat, but through understanding and strategic partnership. Zyra regarded Elias with a rare smile. "You have done well, Captain Ward. Humans have proven themselves not through force alone, but through intellect, courage, and perseverance. You have earned my respect, and more importantly, the respect of my empire." As the council dispersed, Elias looked out at the glowing towers, the flowing energy, and the ships moving in precise harmony. He realized that humans, though few, had a power that transcended technology or weapons, the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to rise to challenges that seemed impossible. And in this alien empire, that power was finally recognized. Zyra's presence beside him was quiet but commanding. "The next stage approaches," she said. "You have shown humans value, but there is still more to understand, more to teach, and more to accomplish. Are you ready? Humanity will prove its worth, not just for survival, but for the future we can create together." It was in creativity, courage, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit. And now, in the heart of the alien empire, those qualities were being recognized, celebrated, and relied upon. For the first time, Captain Elias Ward felt that humans were not just surviving, they were shaping the future. And that future, however uncertain, held promise for both species, bound together by respect, strategy, and shared strength. The council hall was silent. Alien nobles, advisors, and human representatives alike gathered to witness what would become history. Captain Elias Ward stood near the center, his posture steady, his mind focused. Months of tension, conflict, and delicate negotiation had led to this moment. The rebellion had been quelled, the empire stabilized, and the path forward was clear, but now it was time for the final act. Queen Zyra's presence dominated the chamber. Her violet eyes swept across those assembled, calm yet commanding. The air shimmered with energy, a subtle pulse that reminded all present of her power. And yet her attention was fixed on Elias. It was no longer an ultimatum. It was a challenge, a chance to solidify trust and respect between their species. Elias met her gaze, aware of the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I understand what this symbolizes. It is not about surrender or submission or giving up freedom. It is about partnership, about showing that humans can stand as equals and contribute to the future we share. This is how peace will endure." It was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. No human wedding traditions applied here. Instead, it was a fusion of alien ritual and symbolism designed to reflect unity, balance, and strength. Energy arcs danced across the chamber, reflecting the bond being forged. Symbols of both human and alien cultures glowed above the assembly. Humans and aliens alike watched, captivated, as Elias and Zyra took their places at the center. Zyra's eyes softened slightly as she spoke. "Captain Ward, you have proven yourself beyond expectations. You have shown the strength of your species not in weapons, but in wisdom, courage, and adaptability. Humanity will now stand as partner, not subject in this empire. Today, we prove that humans can contribute to peace, not through submission, but through partnership." The ceremonial process was technical, precise, and beautiful, but to Elias, the most important part was invisible, the mutual respect established between two species that had once been enemies. Outside the council chamber, the city spires glowed softly, reflecting the dawn of a new era. Human officers and diplomats watched from observation galleries, many whispering to one another about what had been achieved. This was not just a symbolic act, it was a statement to the galaxy. Humans were not pawns. They were thinkers, leaders, and partners capable of shaping interstellar events. As the ceremony concluded, Elias and Zyra stepped forward together, acknowledging the assembly. For the first time, humans and aliens celebrated as equals. Applause and acknowledgement rippled through the chamber, a mixture of relief, respect, and admiration. The alliance had been sealed not through fear or domination, but through recognition of humanity's ingenuity and courage. Afterwards, Elias found a moment of quiet with Zyra in a chamber overlooking the city. The light of distant stars shimmered across the towers, reflecting off the bridges of energy like rivers of fire. The queen's eyes were calm, her expression unreadable yet thoughtful. "You have done well," she said. "Many doubted humanity, many underestimated you, yet you have shown that your species possesses not only intelligence and courage, but insight, adaptability, and vision. I see now why you were chosen, and I believe that through this union, both our peoples will benefit. Humans bring unpredictability and insight. My empire brings stability and strength. Together, we can face whatever challenges the galaxy presents." For the first time in a long while, he felt hope, not the fragile hope of temporary survival, but the steady, enduring hope that comes from knowing that effort, courage, and intelligence can change the course of history. Over the following weeks, the Union brought tangible results. Trade agreements were formed, shared technology programs began, and collaborative military exercises demonstrated the complementary strengths of humans and aliens. Where humans brought creativity and unpredictability, the alien empire provided stability, precision, and advanced technology. Conflicts that once seemed inevitable were resolved through dialogue, strategy, and mutual respect. Elias took a central role in this process, not as a ruler, but as a bridge between cultures. He led councils, advised on strategy, and helped integrate human creativity into systems that had once been rigid and predictable. Slowly, the perception of humanity shifted, not only in the eyes of the queen and her advisors, but throughout the empire. Humans were valued not as outsiders, but as partners, capable of influencing events across the stars. One evening, after a long day of planning and negotiation, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the alien city. The towers glowed softly, their energy flowing like living rivers. Ships moved in precise patterns below, yet he could see subtle points where human insight could create improvements, small changes that would ripple across the system, enhancing efficiency without sacrificing flexibility. Zyra appeared silently beside him. "Do you see now?" she asked. "This world is powerful, precise, enduring, yet humans bring something I could not predict: creativity, courage, unpredictable insight. Together, we are stronger than we were separately. Your species has proven that strength is not measured only in weapons, but in courage, intelligence, and spirit. That is why humanity will endure and why the galaxy will remember this day." Their strength lay not only in their minds or technology, but in their determination, adaptability, and moral courage. And now, for the first time, those qualities had been recognized across the stars. As he looked at Zyra, he realized that respect, trust, and partnership could be more powerful than fear, force, or domination. Humans had earned their place, not through submission, but through demonstration of what made them exceptional: their ingenuity, creativity, and unbreakable spirit. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the balcony, shining with promise. Humanity's journey had been perilous, filled with uncertainty and danger, yet they had survived and thrived. Now, with allies across the galaxy, they would shape the future, guided by courage, insight, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as Captain Elias Ward stood with the Queen side by side, he knew one simple truth: humans would never be underestimated again. They had endured, adapted, and triumphed, not just to survive, but to define their place among the stars. The galaxy, vast and full of challenges, awaited them, and humanity, as unpredictable and brilliant as ever, was ready.